I'm really looking forward to next year because I feel like this year was the traditional industry and the new industries clashing against each other. The next year is going to be purely about adoption. Everyone's going to join hands because there is no stopping to what's happening right now.
Welcome to AI Music Unmuted. Real talk by realmusic.ai. The show that talks to experts and thought leaders about tools and truths for musicians in the age of technology and creativity.
Today's guest, Mansoor Rahimat Khan, musician, co-founder, and CEO at Beatoven. Mansoor, welcome to the Real Music Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, let's just start off, I guess, with the obvious. So many people are split between AI replacing musicians and AI being the next big creative leap. You have a classically trained music background. You come from a legacy of musicians in your family. You also have a tech background. Talk to me a little bit about how those have come together and allowed you to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. First of all, really appreciate you reaching out.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I think my background, like you mentioned, I come from a music family. I've been trained from a very young age as a sitar player. My family's been in music for 7 generations. So we are one of the old legacy families from India, which we call as gharanas. And a gharana is basically any family that's doing music for like more than 3 generations. So that's a system of, or a school of, or philosophy of music in India, and the sitar instrument was shaped in my family. So when you're born in such a background, you might see you're born with a lot of burden to kind of like take things forward. But at the same time, I think I was very lucky where my dad was not like very enforcing me the ideology of just doing music full time. He gave me the liberty to explore, and that's where tech happened. I really liked math, and I was a state topper in mathematics, and then I got into um, the intersection of math and music, which is essentially a field called music information retrieval. And so I started working in it in 2014, and that's where it started. I was like, okay, this is very exciting. Can evaluate subjectively and objectively music, right? So this is a very interesting space. And over a period of time, I kept continuing working across startups, across labs, across masters and multiple places, and then eventually landed up at Beathoven, where what I believed was that I think the best way to make an impact in this field is to start a company. And then it also attracts the people who are like you, who can all come together and work together on one single cause. And that was the best way to do it. And 2021 is when it happened.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people refer to it as music tech, as a industry or a sector or vertical, if you will. And I think that just leans too much on the tech side and doesn't really address the creativity of it and what it can enable you to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What do you think most producers, musicians, and other creators are misunderstanding about AI today?
I think there are 2 factions right now, as I've seen in the last 1 year. There is one enthusiastic faction of musicians who are like, hey, this is the new exciting thing. Let's take this and let's like do something with it. And then there is the skeptics, which are on the other side who are like, hey, this is really going to ruin society. This is really going to be bad for musicians. It's going to replace art. There is a binary view. As I see from where I sit, I see those 2 views. The first view is pretty interesting because these guys are like early adopters of tech, and they are using it for composition and like doing very interesting things with music. The second category, however, is fair to be concerned about. Their concerns are valid because it's not like a technology that is not replacing artists. It is in some level, right? There are a lot of workflows that are getting replaced, and the problem that those guys have is the way it's been built, right? Like it's taking content from them, training models, and then essentially replacing them. That is not something most artists are cool with. So yeah, I think that's my view, at least from where I sit right now, and that's what I observe. I specifically think that there is a middle ground, and that's what we have been trying to do as a company as well.
What you're talking about really is ethical development of AI music technology. How do we get people to understand that more? I talk to a lot of musicians, and what's interesting is they think that everyone that I talk to in the music tech space are not musicians. You can go to Berklee School of Music and not even play an instrument now. So it's a big shift.
Yeah.
But what do you think? How can we get more people to understand the difference in the ethical use of AI and the benefits of it?
I think firstly, I would like more musicians and I would encourage more musicians to enter this space as builders. I think we need more of them. I think the industry is just populated with a lot of technologists who have no understanding of how the music industry. These guys have never even been in a studio or have ever played an instrument, and I don't really want them dictating how arts should be going forward. It should rather be actual musicians who really have empathy, who understand the music industry building these things. So we need more of those guys. So that's my first appeal. Come build, join into this territory. The second would be, I think a lot can be done with these tools. In terms of composition, in terms of creativity, I think there is a level of awareness that needs to be done for artists so that they get out of this mindset of, this is going to replace me. Maybe there are ways to find new revenue opportunities. There's a new market that's been created, right? So we need to show them the market. We need to show them, okay, what is possible, what's not possible. Because I've spoken at so many panels, I've spoken at so many conferences. Every time I say a few things and then I see, I have heard people, like I've just overheard them discussing, hey, this guy was saying like this is kind of possible. And it's so interesting to hear that, because like they come with a very different perspective while coming to these panels, and then they leave with a different perspective, right? So the more we make them aware, the more it is going to keep improving in terms of how they look at things as well.
Well, there's also people coming in, like again, musicians, all types of creators who are coming in now, maybe even at a young age, maybe they're in their early teens and they're starting off with AI. There's a lot of people who don't remember before DAWs, before MIDI. It's interesting to see there's a whole generation coming up who hopefully are skipping the kind of fear-mongering part of AI and just really reaping the benefits.
I think so. And that's how it's going to be, right? Like there's one generation, like my generation, or maybe like one more generation below. Like we are the ones who have seen the olden tools. We have seen, like, so it's kind of a little hard for us to shift from that and be like, okay, this is the new era. But like if you go the generation that is just like born in, let's say, 2005, 2010, they're immediately, the first things that they're seeing is these technologies, right? So what is their source of reference? They don't have a source of reference. So this is the new thing. This is the new tool for them. So yeah, I think it's exciting to see how humans will always keep evolving and all these things. Like there's no going back. Like in my opinion, a lot of things that have been built, even if like there's not much progress that happens in AI from this point onwards, but at least till this point, we have made a lot of progress, and all of us are using LLMs, all of us are using these technologies, right? So I don't think there's any going back from here. I think there will be better frameworks and better utilization of these technologies as we go forward.
So what do you think a little bit? I know Beethoven talks a bit about kind of the emotion and how that fits into music with authenticity and context. Talk to me a little bit about what does kind of emotion mean in music when you're talking about algorithms and math and science?
It's a very interesting question. I think emotions is a very difficult thing to define, right? Like, I don't think we as humans also understand it fully. I mean, there have been labs that have been trying to study emotions because there's a whole field which is trying to understand this so that, can we like translate this knowledge into robotics, right? Can we translate this logic into AI? But I think emotion comes from a place of childhood, comes from a place of upbringing, your references, your memories, your experiences. And it's quite possible an AI track can make you feel sad, can make you feel happy, because maybe there is that particular note or a chord or something in there that just kind of like hits you, and it comes from some memory that you had in your childhood, or it had in your some experience in life, right? I don't see a fundamental difference of why AI cannot do that versus a human being who's an actual artist who's performing can do that. So my perspective, when we say emotional, we are essentially trying to say that, okay, you're creating a film, you're creating a movie, or you're creating a podcast or a game, and you do want to like reflect some of those elements in your content and accompany it with the right kind of music. And we leave it up to you to decide what is that right music. It's such a subjective field, right? So maybe it's a hit or a miss. A user might just find like the music that they were looking for, and it works with what they were looking for. So I think it's more subjective is what I would say. And emotion is very tough to define, I would say, honestly. But we do give the ability for them to experiment and play around and decide for themselves.
Yeah, we had Ori Lineker, who heads up music for Artlist,
Yeah, I
on,
know.
and
Yeah.
yeah, a good guy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one of the things that he was talking about was what music supplies in video is mood. He owns studios, he was a touring musician, and he never thought necessarily about what mood does to video. So, I mean, I think that ties into the actual authenticity and the feeling that music provides.
I think so, yeah. I mean, especially them being in that business where they're focused on music for videos for so many years, they have a much better understanding of, what kind of music is working well with what kind of videos. And, over a period of time, it just helps you get that sense. It's interesting how you can put data to emotions. It's very interesting.
And I think something that a lot of people were surprised about over the past 5 years is one of the early big adoptions of AI was on the creative side of things. I think if you go back
Yeah.
7, 8, 9 years ago, no one really expected it to, visuals, music. That surprised most of us, I think.
Yeah, it's a very good point you make because I remember in 2017 or 16, I don't know. I was looking at this newspaper in India where there was a column by Elon Musk where he had said this statement that AI is going to mostly replace all fields, maybe except art. And the funny thing was, the first thing that went after was art. Like, image generation, video generation, music generation, blockchain, like all of these kind of so it's exactly the opposite of what was predicted, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating because art has such a huge consumer appeal, right? Like, I mean, what is our generation doing right now? Most of us are on all these apps like Instagram, TikTok. That's the majority of the time we all spend there. And these are all creative apps. People are just making videos. People are just having fun. Uh, and I think that's such a big part of consumerism today that you cannot neglect it. And that is the market that people would want to enter as the first market, in my opinion.
Well, as it's become more accessible to everyone, it has completely raised the bar of what makes good art, music, content from a digital perspective.
Yep.
I can't say that about, art overall.
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
obviously, I don't know if the best sitar player out there is ever going to be AI generated. That said, it's really been a fast and pretty interesting journey. What do you think is the changing skill set of, say, producers and engineers right now? I guess workflow is one of them. And we can get into the economics of everything too.
Yeah. I think definitely one of the changing aspects that I'm seeing is the, like you said, workflow. The process of how things are getting created is changing very dynamically. Like previously, if you wanted to find a particular sound in your production work, you had to search through a library of samples of loops. But now maybe you can generate it, right? And that's much different from a search experience. I mean, generative is essentially a search problem if you think of it. It's like you're looking for something specific, but then instead of searching through an existing database, you're trying to create something entirely new that is more driven by what you want out of the system, right? So that is one major shift in behavior that's happened. The other one I would say is there have been so many tools around auto mixing, auto mastering, which are giving you the benefit to quickly get something out of the way, which would otherwise take a lot of time. So at scale, with people who are just getting started into music, they can just leverage all these tools and quickly learn all these concepts. The most interesting thing that I've seen recently is the educational element of it. If you were a producer in 2005, 2006, like getting started on Ableton, you would have to go through so many tutorials on YouTube and like just to understand what each knob does, what each part of the DAW does. Today, you can use an agent who can assist you by looking at your screen and be like, hey, try this particular aspect and maybe this is what will happen. This is EQing. This is, this educational element of how AI can work with you and educate you and teach you how to use these tools. I think that is very exciting in my opinion. It is just reducing the bar for how many people can learn these tools now. So if you are genuinely interested and you don't have a lot of time, you can use these tools and integrate them in your workflows.
Yeah, and I think one of the words there is collaborative, right? It's not replacing what you do, but it's enhancing what you do. It's collaborative. I pretty much all day on and off work with AI and everything that I work on. I have a team of people in this business and some others that are scattered around the globe, different time zones. But I always kind of have my AI assistant there working with me for, quick answers, helping me develop ideas. I've had meetings where I've said I would have had to get 8 experts together, at least on a Zoom meeting, if not in person, to do what I did, say, within an hour. So it's by no means replacing some of the things that I could do without it, but it's just adding a great efficiency. And, there's still work for me to do once I kind of pull all the information together, but it's been a complete game changer from workflow, just in general business, to
Yep.
music and creativity as well.
Yep. And then you have this entire generation of agentic workflows that is coming in now. So that will even make it much more accessible and much more easier to do things, right? Like, so yeah, maybe next year, I'm really looking forward to next year because I feel like this year was still kind of like the traditional industry and the new industries clashing against each other. The next year is
Right.
going to be purely about adoption. It's going to be like, okay, like what do we do with those? How do we distribute this? Where do we put this? Like everyone's going to join hands because there is no stopping to what's happening right now. Yeah.
Talk a little more about the old industry and the new industry. I think I understand a few things that you're saying, but help people understand. I mean, I think when we started off, right, there was people's exposure was text prompts, something that spit out, and that produced a lot of novelty music and so forth that early on gave everyone a bad name. We've learned a lot, right, over the past few years about data and compensation, but talk to me a little more about the new and the old.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just music, right? If you look at across the board, you look at banking, you look at insurance, you look at every major industry that impacts our lives. This year has been for all the executives to just keep an eye and see, okay, what is this technology? How is it going to work? Is it going to, how do we deal with security issues? How do we deal with, all these questions? And then it has given the birth of like so many startups and enterprises that have emerged in the last 6 months that are essentially solving each of these specific problems. They've all raised money. They've all raised a lot of capital. Now they're all going to enter into the next year, right? And next year, this year, a lot of these companies are signing on early pilots with all these potential enterprises. So the enterprises are learning and they're investing some of their resources and some money and being like, okay, let's see what is possible with this technology. And I would assume most of these pilots will go successful because the technology is improving, workflows is improving, is enhancing a lot of capabilities for their internal processes. 2026, these would become full deployments. These would be integrated inside how you work, how you do a lot of collaboration across the organization. In the specific context of music, there will be so many new things that will emerge, like fine tuning is one of the biggest one that I'm seeing that I believe is going to be. And what fine tuning basically means is you take the likeness of a specific artist and then you give that access to mass consumption and then monetize it and create a new revenue opportunity for the artist. We already saw some evidence of that happening with 11 Labs just launching their marketplace for voice actors. So a lot of the big voices are also listing themselves on these marketplaces. So voice is starting to happen. Music will be the next frontier. Like, so I believe this is like, so that's what I mean by traditional industries were like completely boycotting and being like, hey, we don't want this, this is not good, and all of that stuff. But now they're like, okay, what do we do together? That's the biggest change in mindset that I'm seeing that's going to happen in 2026.
Yeah, and I think you touched on there like virtualized musicians, and this allows musicians an extra revenue source. I think some companies are doing it better out there than others. Talk to me a little bit about what you think some of the best economic models are, or how the economy of AI music as it pertains to actual musicians making money. How do you see that come together, or where do you think it's going?
Yeah. So there are going to be two economies clearly. So there's going to be one economy of actually three. So there's going to be one economy of completely AI generated music for streaming, consumption, for like production, for creation. So it's going to create a new class of creators, which does not exist as of today. A new class of creators, new class of consumers, I would say. So maybe it will take some revenues away from the existing streaming and creator tools. Maybe it will create a new revenue stream. We don't know yet what's going to happen there. The numbers will speak for themselves. But the second category is basically the traditional industries. They will have a lot of AI integrations. They will try to expand their revenue streams by adding new features, new upselling opportunities, new capabilities. Maybe like something I could imagine, maybe on Spotify, can I remix my favorite album and like create my own version of it, and then there is a relatability amongst all individuals and be like, hey, did you hear my remix of this particular track? You can hear it on Spotify. You know, some early announcements are already in there, and I would imagine like some product manager would be thinking about this already inside of Spotify, right? So that's
Yeah.
the second economy. The third economy, this is a very interesting thesis that I have, and I think you would probably agree, is there's going to be an entire class of musicians who are going to completely abandon all of these platforms, and they're just going to go direct to fan, both online and offline. Online probably with the technology, offline just through real world experiences. I strongly believe that offline market is going to boom because a lot of consumers are going to be done with the AI slop being fed to them on these platforms, and they will start looking for real world experiences, and that market is going to boom significantly in my opinion in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, that's an Really interesting topic. I think a lot of people aren't thinking about that, kind of, we've seen lots of shifts in the past of different markets changing. And there's some people who just say, okay, we're going to abandon this and do our own thing over here. What do you think are some of the best way to keep the human element in a lot of AI today?
I think, I had written this blog in 2022, which kind of went viral on LinkedIn. And I had basically written about this philosophy of, what AI can replace and AI cannot replace. Um, in my opinion, AI can replace inefficient workflows. It can replace certain processes, certain operational aspects of life. It can replace things that are functional in nature. What it cannot replace is the true creative element of an artist. And what that basically means is the real reason why a lot of us like get hooked onto a specific artist is because we relate to their culture, we relate to their vibe, we relate to their sound, and that sound comes from a place of very individual journey, and it is impossible for a large language model that is summarizing across humans to kind of replicate a certain individual journey, and that is going to find a lot of value in the near run. So I believe that the more authentic and original you are and the more true to your roots, the more value you're going to start finding in this AI economy. The more you try to do general stuff, which is everyone else can also do, the more you will be probably replaced by your AI, in my opinion.
So where do you think, if there's a musician, or, well, I'd say more musician than producer, who's hesitant about where to start in utilizing some AI, but what do you think of some more on the creativity side of it are some good areas for them to start?
I personally don't think you should be neglecting any of the traditional music theory, music. There is joy still in picking an instrument and learning it the hard way, doing good practice. You won't be able to appreciate any of this music until and unless you've gone through that rut yourself, right? Like, and what is it about prompting and generating music? It's you're not really doing anything. I mean, a lot of people will call something called prompt engineering. I mean, I feel like it's a made up term by AI industry.
I was gonna say almost an oxymoron.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny what that term is, but you're essentially just learning how to get the model to get you the best kind of results, right? It's kind of like how in Google search we used to have how do you search on Google so that you find the right links and that you want to read. So I believe that original skill of music, of learning the theory, learning the basics, that is still going to be your starting point. You cannot completely just skip that just because you have a lot of AI tools, and yeah, there's a lot of aspect and merit to doing things the hard way even today.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's going to be people, of course, who don't know how to read, write music, theory. I guess you don't even have to, be strong in theory. You can still be creative without it. But there's a lot of people who just haven't picked up an instrument. And this is, more producers and so forth who are creating a lot of music. And, that's okay. Some of
Yep.
it's good, some of it isn't, but it's
Yep.
enabling everyone to do more.
Yeah, like I said, right, there is going to be one class of creators which is going to be completely new, and they are probably going to be like these diva and hip hop kind of people who have it in them, like the X Factor, what they call in these reality shows, right? And then these tools are just letting them kind of build their own sounds, build their own music, and combined with their personality, they can kind of become big stars. Nobody cares that they really picked up a guitar, or like they just have that element of going viral on Instagram, going viral and trying to be like a pop star. So yeah, there's going to be a few of those. How the society thinks about it is a very secondary topic. Like, or the purists will be very pissed with it. They'll be like, hey, what the hell? Like, how can this even happen? But it's just how things work, right? Like, so yeah. Like I heard about this news that there's somebody who launched an AI record label, and it's already kind of like doing pretty well. So yeah, like look at that economy, right? Like, how can you stop that? It's a new thing. There's a buyer for it. There is a seller for it. There is an economy right there.
I always think about, you have to look back when you start to understand where we're going. And, I'm old enough to remember, of course, MIDI, that's come back 45 years ago. Suddenly anyone can have a Steinway, and that was considered cheating at first. And now it's just accepted. Majority of music is created using MIDI nowadays. I grew up mostly a drummer and percussionist and drum machines, where it was a cool thing. Now you listen to music and it just still feels good to hear a real drummer laying down some tracks. So, all these changes, they have a lot of good to them, but I think there's always the creativity, and some of the
Yeah.
things from the past still sound great.
Yeah, like exactly what you just said, right? Like, so look at how the value of an artist on stage who's actually performing with their whole hard work, how that has gone up in the last couple of years. With AI, now it's only going to go even higher. So the number of people who are actual purists, who are like practicing, who are like honing their art, that number is only shrinking over time. So as a result of that, denominator is decreasing. So your value is going to keep increasing, right? So if you are one of those people, I feel you should be really proud about it, and you should continue doing what you're doing, because your value is only going to go up in the next 10 years.
In your style of music, where have you seen AI come in?
In classical, in Indian classical, I actually have a friend. He was in my lab in Georgia Tech, and he built something very interesting. So what he did is he built a robot that can play Carnatic violin, and I was blown away to see that, because like he it was his PhD thesis, and he built this motor which, like, which slides on the violin, and it's able to kind of like, get the nuances of Carnatic music. In Carnatic music, they have the aspect of microtones, where you go from one note to another and you keep oscillating between that, and the algorithm was doing it pretty well. So it was fascinating to see something like that, how AI is kind of entering into instrument playing as well. What's the use case? Maybe there are some of these performances that happen. They do actually, like, there are these concept performances in various parts of the world, where there's a showcase of technology, of how technology means a traditional performance. But will it completely replace and bypass an actual Carnatic violinist? I don't think so. Like, there is so much of that element of that artist while he is on stage or she's on stage, and how they perform, and they basically bring that into excitement into the audience, right? So that is not replaceable, in my opinion.
And can you think of any examples, maybe even stories you've heard recently about musicians, producers, other creators who are able to really complete a project, finish a project, or really do what they were able to do with the help of AI,
Oh,
whereas
of
maybe they
course.
would have been stuck for a year without.
I know so many. Like, I can, like, there is one of my friends. He is like, he has this interesting workflow where he just keeps creating like 2 to 3 tracks every week and keeps publishing it on Spotify, because he kind of studies the algorithm and he sees, okay, which playlists are picking up, and he listens to those playlists, and then he tries to create music that can potentially get picked up in those playlists. And he operated his studio like a machine. Like three tracks have to go out every week. Now, for somebody like him, with AI, he's supercharged. He can do like so many new experiments and test out ideas, at 10x the speed. So that is one example. The second one is, like, a lot of the production houses, agencies are right now doing temp track testing using AI. Like, they won't publish it because of commercial and copyright reasons. They will not admit that they are using it. And of course, they are not using it. They are not putting it in their final output. But the back and forth that happens between a producer and the agency to decide what's the right song that we need to use, everybody that I've been speaking to lately is using AI generated music to decide on, make that decision, right? So it's a direct fit, like it is, because that was a cumbersome process. A producer would have to deliver overnight. They would sit on their DAW all night, produce, and then the client would just reject it. But now they can just generate it in a minute and be like, okay, something like this, and they're like, yeah, yeah, sounds good, and then they could actually go and produce the whole track, right? So it just helps in that prototyping stage much better.
Well, that's helping them creatively come up with new ideas, try new things, test things, and even obviously great efficiency there. What do you think is a surprising thing that we'll see in the next, I would normally say 5 years, but it could probably even be a year from now, how fast these things are moving. But what's coming down the road that maybe even some prediction that you think we'll see with AI and music?
I think AI generated music is only going to get bigger next year. Um, and it's going to be more integrated inside. I think a lot of times, what is surprising me is like, music, the way it just works is like, okay, I listen to a nice song, and then I'm just on repeat. Like, I don't know how many times I even repeated. Like, some go like 100, 200 times, right? So the surprising thing is, I'm scared about the fact that what if I find an AI music track that gets me on repeat, and then I'm just listening to it, and I don't really care about, like, the source of it, right? So and that is a very high likelihood and very high possibility. So if it sounds good, the quality is good, yeah, why not? Like, I would have to listen to it. So I think that is a very, very likely thing that's going to happen, and I won't be surprised, honestly, like, if I also fall for it.
Yeah. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, right? What it's some people say what one thing AI can't replace is the listener, right? You're being affected by the music, the mood of it. Maybe someday AI music will be created for AI listeners to generate something else. But I think, where we stand today and or what will always be there is the listener will be, and that's all subjective,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It always has been.
Yeah. And I also think like all of us will probably have our own replica AI agents. So we'll be browsing on these websites and we'll be doing all the activities that we do, but we are actually not there. The agent is doing everything on our behalf, and then at the end of the day I get a summary report like, okay, these are all the activities that I did today. So it's a crazy world, right? Like you have two realities. You have a online reality and you have an offline reality, and the online reality is kind of like outsourced to an agent.
What about music discovery? I always myself, I listen to a lot of music, and I'm always, you get recommendations from people. Hey, check this out, check that out. It's almost not enough time to listen to everything you want to listen to. Is there a way for AI to help you discover new music that you wouldn't discover otherwise?
Yeah, I can give you a very good example. There is one pilot that we are doing with a pretty big customer where we are essentially helping them redefine their catalog. So today, the way how people search for music is by their favorite artists, by their favorite moods, their genres. But what if you could just prompt your way through a song, right? So that's going to be the new way of music discovery. Like people are going to be like, "Hey, I'm sitting in this park and it's raining and it feels really nice. Can you recommend me a nice song?" So it's not going to generate, but it's going to go through a database and find you that accurate song that is very close to your prompt. That's the new way of discovery. So I think the music industry needs to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and I think it can be, music. You could say, I want this certain mood or so forth. But even just purely non-generated, just purely recorded music that has
Yeah,
no AI generation, I would love
exactly.
more recommendations.
I'm exactly referring to recorded music. I'm not even
Yeah,
suggesting AI generated music. I'm saying that there is a huge undiscovered catalog of music on streaming platforms that never gets discovered because of this, the way how the algorithms operate. And AI might actually give an opportunity to those catalogs to get discovered because of they are closer to what users are prompting and not closer to what users are searching. There's a
right.
difference between the two.
I always say when people, maybe they're just meeting me or so forth, they ask, oh, what kind of music you like? Or, I mean, the worst question in the world is, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite band? I'm like, well, where were we going with this? There's so many things. But I always say there's two types of music I listen to with other people, and music I totally listen to by myself. I don't expect people to, even sit around. I'm not going to put it in the car when I'm with a handful of people, or my kids are not going to want to listen to some of this stuff.
I'm very bullish on the aspect of the likeness models are going to evolve. I'm very excited to see that new consumer opportunity. Every artist like having their own replica, consumers, the super fan theory, right? I strongly believe in that. Like there have been so many attempts at direct to fan monetization through NFTs and all these kind of different mechanisms, and unfortunately, none of them have worked out yet. But I feel like AI is probably the first technology that's actually going to make it happen. True fan engagement and through experiences for consumers and for artists.
So tell me what specifically at Beethoven, we haven't talked much about it. What would you like for them to know about it? And talk to me a little bit about where it's going, at least what you can share right now.
Yeah. See, Beethoven started out as a background music generation tool for videos, games, and content creators to make original soundtracks. But over the last 4 or 5 years, it has evolved into a lot of things, and we built our own foundation model called Maestro, which is trained on 100% licensed music. So we showed an example to the world that it is possible to build these models without actually scraping a lot of content. And then we are also committing revenue share to all our rights holders. We are passing away some of our revenues back to the musicians and the rights holders who are contributing to the data set. The next phase for us is exactly what I was saying, like creating artist likeness models. Can we enhance the revenue stream for every artist by creating models that are in their style, and then they could just own that entire control. They could like circulate it to their relationships in consumption, in creation. Let's say they like an ad agency is looking for specific music for an ad, and a producer could just, instead of actually doing it themselves, they could just send their likeness model as a link to the agency and they could create the music, and then, oh, I really like this, and then now they get into the production for an upsell. So creating
Right.
new monetization opportunities for these guys, that's on the roadmap for us.
All right, Mansoor, it was great talking to you. So where can people go to learn more about Beethoven?
Yeah, just go to our website www.beatoven.ai, and it's Beatoven.
Well, thank you. So let's go make some music, and I appreciate your time. Everyone check out realmusic.ai, and thank you again, Mansoor.
Thank you.